I love it. I want to hear more about your current hunting and gathering, but I want to drill down a little bit on the vegan and vegetarian side because I have my own story with this as well. I was a raw vegan for 7 months. I only
Oh, no
lasted
way.
7 months. Yeah,
Hey.
about 13 years ago. And most of my audience will know that during that time, I lost 25 pounds of muscle mass and was extremely gaunt and had horrible gas. I've written about it and talked about it at various times. But I'm curious about your experience with vegan and vegetarian diets and what eventually led you to include animal foods in your diet.
Yeah. Well, it's funny you say that. When I was first starting to experiment with it, I had been, working at a gym as a trainer and, into kind of bodybuilding style lifting and was pretty thick and trained with guys who were strong and thick. And I started on this diet, and every day I'd come into the gym, they'd just be looking at me like, dude, what are you doing? Because I just started losing weight. In my mind, like an anorexic person, somebody with an eating disorder, in my mind, this was a good thing because that world's like a cult. And in it, there's this idea that everything that you're shedding is like toxins. It's one of those things where you'll be like, now it's real obvious to me. It's like, well, define, what do you mean by toxins? Like which toxins? It'd be easy for, especially for millennials and younger, to take for granted the access to information that we have right now. You know what I mean? In the way, like, let's say, in fighting, for instance, you can remember back in the day, like you could be like, oh, my kung fu master is so badass, like, oh, my taekwondo guy's so badass. And it's like, before UFC, everybody could claim whatever they wanted. And then when they all got in the ring together, it didn't take long for like one style to emerge. Everybody was like, that's what actually works. Because all the BS got called out, right? So I think similarly, now we're in this environment where if somebody claims something like, oh, that's just the toxins leaving, like it's really easy to be like, what toxins are you talking about? Like, how I had 25 pounds of toxins. What does that mean? But back then there was very little information, and there wasn't so much confusion. YouTube didn't even exist yet. There was no way for me to validate any of this stuff. I just bought into it, to be honest. So I thought losing weight was good. I got pretty skinny. I got down to, bare bones. And I lived like that for a long time. Now, there were some benefits for sure, especially in the beginning. I felt light. I felt amazing. Mostly I felt like I was part of something really special, and what happened was my whole ego got woven into this identity. And, now I'm very skeptical of any isms, anything that ends in ism. I'm like, I don't like going down those roads, because it's like we get our identity too caught up in something, and we'll spend years defending something and not really sometimes open to new ideas. So, but I was young then. I bought into it. I had a really good time. I met some zany people. It was quite a ride, and I learned a lot, but I learned a lot of things that weren't true as well. And there was really no critical thought. And, over time, I'd say the first half was really good. The second half was like fungal infections, was, challenges, like always feeling hungry, never feeling satisfied, lots of digestive issues, difficult time, like having like regularity and all that kind of stuff. So, eventually I think I was just really, really hungry. Eventually I was just really, really hungry.
And as you said, and I found this striking because I heard you mention it on another podcast as well, when you started eating butter, you were eating 1 to 2 pounds a day. Your body was just so hungry, it sounds like, for these animal fats, these animal nutrients when you started eating this animal food again. That's crazy, but it makes sense.
And it wasn't like after I had to go take a nap or I was bogged down. I mean, to me, it's kind of stunning to think about now, but honestly, I was digesting it really well. I ate a lot of fats back then anyway. I lived on a lot of coconut oil and things like that. So my body was pretty adapted to handling fats. But I mean, I was just blowing through that stuff. And it was the same. Then I started drinking cream and milk. And I mean, I could drink a gallon of it a day. And then when I started eating meats, I was eating them raw, because I'd been so used to eating raw foods. And, it took me a while to kind of build myself back up. But the weirdest part of that, looking back on it, was like, well, what makes me special now? That was my special thing, right? I'm the guy who only I'm the guy who defines myself by what I don't do. And that to me is a dangerous area to be in. So, today I'm a much more moderate. I think some people would be like, this guy hunts and gathers, eats cicadas. There's nothing moderate about that. But I do feel like I'm a much more moderate person today.
Yeah, and I can relate to all of that, having been a vegan and then having transitioned off of veganism and adding meat back to my diet, similarly gaining weight back. But for me, I didn't necessarily fix my autoimmune issues till I did a strict carnivore diet. And so that was the beginning of my journey. And in many ways, carnivory and veganism are similar, though different. And there's a lot of dogmatism in the carnivore community. And in the last year and a half, I've kind of tried to move away from that and think more about, well, what did I learn from eating a carnivore diet? And I learned that some plants really triggered my eczema, plants that many people consider to be healthy. And that I think that that's a valuable lesson for people to understand.
What kind of plant, I'm curious, like, do you eat any plants now or any plant derivative things? And then what plants were the hardest on your body? I'm really curious about that.
Yeah. So before I went carnivore 3 years ago, I was eating like an organic paleo diet. And that means that I occasionally ate almonds and I ate other nuts, and I would eat some seeds, but not too many, things like chia seeds, some. And then I would have salads with like romaine lettuce and radish and sweet potato and things like this, and maybe some olive oil, some avocado. And then I would have grass-fed meat, and I would eat I had a phase that I think actually triggered a pretty big eczema flare for me, where I was doing larger doses of mushroom extracts, things like reishi and chaga and lion's mane. And yeah. And so I was in residency, after medical school in Seattle, and basically had eczema that went head to toe. And I was like, oh my goodness, what is going on here? I need to reset my body. So I cut all the plants out and had a period where I became a little bit dogmatic as well, thinking, no, humans don't need any plants. Then, as most of my audience will know, after a year and a half of doing that, I started to get some kind of electrolyte issues and kind of felt cold all the time being in keto, because for a year and a half, I ate nothing but meat and fat and organs and salt. And I felt kind of cold all the time. I had some palpitations. And believe me, I had some cognitive dissonance when I added in carbohydrates back, right? And I started with things like squash, which actually ended up triggering my eczema personally. And then I did honey, which didn't bother me at all. And then I went into berries and have kind of gone for the last year and a half with the only plant foods in my diet being things like fruit. And we can talk about why I do that, but I eat a moderate amount of fruit, especially being in Costa Rica. From like a latitude perspective, it kind of makes sense to me to eat fruit, especially if it's growing outside my window. I can basically walk outside, pull a banana off a tree and eat it. So yeah, so fruit has been a positive addition to my diet, as has honey. And so when you were telling the story of going to these vegan conferences and getting up and counteracting everything, it made me think about I still get invitations to keto conferences. And I think, do you know what I talk about these days? I think it'd be amazing. I love the people in the keto space, and I like that we're all thinking about things. But if I were to get up at a keto conference, I would say, hey, I think you guys are hurting yourself with the ketogenic diet long-term. And I imagine that's a little bit of what you were saying at these vegan conferences too.
That's it. I look at it now, I sort of see the all animal diet on one end of the spectrum and all plant diet on the other end of the spectrum. But when I look at the anthropology, I'm like, okay, people hunt and gather, and what they hunt and gather is based almost entirely on where they are. And in particular, latitude, because you get down toward the equator, there's just so much more plant food, and you get up toward the Arctic and there's just so much more animal food dominant in the diet. Right. And so I think we're in our infancy in understanding nutrigenomics and to what degree our genome interacting with food, how much that matters. I try to leave room for both of those extremes to have therapeutic value, but I always joke about I'm going to launch the omnivore diet. It's
this radical thing.
It's crazy. It's called the omnivore diet, hunting and gathering. I often reference this. You've probably seen it, a report. I think it was the Hadza survey that was done with them, hunter-gatherers in Africa. Asking men and women separately to rank their 5 favorite foods from a list. Have you seen that one?
I'm very familiar with that one.
Both are honey, right? That's number 1. And then men, number 2, meat, women, number 2, berries. And I find that to be largely true. Obviously there's tremendous variance, but then you got these bell curves, and I watch my wife around, strawberries, raspberries, how she's lit up by them. And then how I respond to meat. but then it makes so much sense in this historical context, and then it's interesting because then I think it goes baobab for both parties was number 3. And then number 4, men go berries, women go meat. I think that's how that one went. And then they put tubers like at least favorite, right? Subsistence stuff that they have to eat to get the calories in times of hardship. But I think something you said before we started recording just about, hunter-gatherers, the quest for meat. I was watching a video the other day of a guy, sort of an adventurer, a YouTube channel, where he was asking some folks in Tanzania, hunter-gatherers, what's the meaning of life? And the guy's like, oh, meat. And he's like, no. Like, what's most important in life? He's like, yeah, getting meat. It's like, and I really think that's the critical piece. We live at the top of Maslow's hierarchy of needs. So many things are taken care of. It's really easy to get off in these kind of crazy ideas where, oh, you don't need this, you don't need that. We're losing context of what it's like in nature. So whenever somebody talks to me about veganism now, I got like 40 ways to refute it with so much personal experience. But one fun way is like, hey, go watch that show alone. Or go on that show and try to do it as a vegan. Like go out there, because somebody who goes into the wild for food, there's a lot of plant food out there, but not the kind you'd need to live on. That's not even, where I live, it's not even possible.